Tad Smith, who is a finance and strategy professor at the Stern School of Business, one of the top business schools in the world, recently explained what it takes to truly outperform the money printer. Most of traditional finance hasn't remotely grasped this concept yet, but once they do, the implications could lead to a tidal wave of wealth flooding into Bitcoin. What Tad explains here challenges everything we've been taught about diversification, portfolio strategies, and even the role of money itself. Let's roll the clip from Tad.
I didn't realize that if the average year the money printer goes, call it 8 to 10%, even in the Western countries, even in the OECD nations, and the average return on the S&P 500 is, call it 9-ish%, including dividends, maybe 9.7, maybe a little less, that it means that all of the work of the S&P 500, all of the value created there is actually the money printer. That to me was startling. I mean, to think about that, the fundamental notion that in a closed system or even an open system, when you're printing money at the rate of 8 to 10% a year, everything is losing value, and the things that appear to be gaining value are not gaining value. They're just keeping you even. So you can put all your money in the S&P 500 and you're not gaining any relative wealth at all. That's a startling insight. I mean, when you really think about the entire value of the S&P 500, on average, over a long period of time, not even a long period of time, is equivalent to the money printer. That's, to me, a shock. And it was a shock that said, oh my goodness, how do you think about creating wealth that is relatively greater in this economy? And you have to look hard. The other thing you can imagine is I could tell you about Sharpe ratios and diversification. I could tell you all these different things. And, you know, it's interesting. You can take a concept like diversification of risk, and at a top level, it can be a very powerful and useful tool. But if you are so focused on the mechanistic aspect of that, you can step back and miss the forest, which is in a highly diversified portfolio, it's unbelievably hard to pick up relative amounts of wealth. It is. Diversifying your portfolio, however you do it, is by and large going to reduce your incremental gain in wealth, irrespective of the Sharpe ratio. It's concentration of capital in specific bets that outperform the money printer where you actually create wealth. That was a shock to me. I just didn't get it. I didn't understand it. Even though I taught finance for 20 plus years, I'm still a professor at NYU Stern, at Stern Business School. I've taught strategy and finance for technology, media, and entertainment companies. I'm on a 2-year hiatus, but I'll be presumably going back in the spring. For 25 years, I have almost, actually more than 1,000 former students. And I still didn't get it until I'm age 58. That's the Bitcoin journey.
Now that we've heard from Tad, let's unpack his key points. He highlights that the S&P 500 is essentially just keeping pace with the money printer. And when you diversify across the entire market, you don't outperform. You become the market. Diversification means owning both winners and losers, which averages out your returns and leaves you stuck with just keeping up with the money printer itself. Holding cash is even worse. It's like storing your wealth in bananas. They rot and become worthless over time, obviously. Tad points out that even a well-diversified portfolio often underperforms the money printer once fees and taxes are factored in. This is where Bitcoin completely changes the future of capital allocation. As a monetary tool with perfect scarcity, infinite durability, divisibility, and internet portability, Bitcoin allows people to save in a form of money that isn't being debased by excess government spending or commercial bank lending. Less than 1% of the world recognizes its potential, yet over 94% of Bitcoin have already been mined. This creates a powerful dynamic where wealth is flooding into Bitcoin at a time when supply is extremely limited. This shift will occur as other asset classes riddled with risk and inefficiencies lose their appeal. Bitcoin, as the lowest potential energy asset, attracts wealth naturally. Over time, as free markets compete, VCs fund new startups that compete with S&P 500 juggernauts, contractors build more houses, and miners mine more gold, wealth flows away from high potential energy assets like the S&P 500 and real estate and into Bitcoin. Saylor compared this to a waterfall where energy inevitably moves from the higher to lower potential energy states. Bitcoin is that lowest potential energy state. The market desperately wants to move wealth into it over time, making it the most efficient store of value. Keeping wealth outside of Bitcoin is fighting against the natural waterfall. Ultimately, Tad's point is clear. If you're trying to grow your wealth over time by creating a diversified portfolio, you're not getting ahead. You're just treading water. Holding Bitcoin not only preserves value, but also positions you for massive upside, especially as adoption continues to accelerate. For the last 16 years, Bitcoin consistently shocks skeptics to the upside, and there is no reason to believe the waterfall will stop flowing. In fact, it appears to only be expanding rapidly. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you next time.